You know, I said this in the past about how I should make it an Olympic sport to just shit on bad products, bad movies, bad TV shows, bad games, and there should be a bad product award ceremony, right? Like, it's sad that companies, at least in the entertainment industry, don't even try to compete. Like, the companies that try to compete come from China. Like, the products come from South Korea and Japan. They're not competing officially, right? Because they're being made in other countries, but they're competing in the way that they are giving the consumer the product they want. Like the creators of Power World became millionaires effectively. Now I don't know what the tax is there in Japan, but okay, you make $1 million, you give 30% of that to the government here, because God forbid you make money without the government taking a cut of it. And again, you just sit on $700,000. Like, that's a retirement money in most places around the world. Like, that's money if you're, say, in your 40s or 50s and you have just 700 grand lying around, you could effectively retire. And they're competing with the product, and through the product there's this idea of pushing your culture, and America created this, right, the idea, right, pushing your culture through soft power, through entertainment. And this is what happened when entertainment became global. It's why when you have, say, people shit on anime or people shit on Japan and that entertainment sector, you have people coming out the woodworks telling you to shut the hell up. It's like Americans born in America will tell you to shut your fucking mouth because your anime is just a superior, bro. It is a superior product to any of the cartoons coming out. Like, you might have a couple of outliers somewhere. Like, her Arcane was good, but it's like, okay, we got Arcane, maybe like Hell of a Boss or Has Been Hotel, which is made by an indie dev. But okay, you can probably count the amount of good animations from the past 4 years on one hand. Where in Japan, anime, it's almost like bangers every fucking week. You can have a list of hundreds. So, the Skull and Bones disaster in this context was surprising because it came from Singapore, but it was from the Singapore branch of Ubisoft. A $200 million Skull and Bones disaster. Like, do you think Elden Ring cost $200 million? Like, do you think Power World cost $200 million? I don't think so. Right? Like Helldivers, no idea, but let's give this a watch.
Heretic!
Oh, up. I always forget to do this. At least when I start. Doop, doop, doop.
Lay down what you have stolen from me!
You've no claim to it, Robert. Take yourself from here before I'm forced to thin your ranks further.
You play a dangerous game!
I assure you, this is no game.
Is this Assassin's Creed 1? Like, see, Assassin's Creed 1, like, most, because we get this idea, and I'm not going to keep stopping, we get this idea that YouTubers and edgelords online is what's generating the hate for Western products and multi-billion-dollar AAA products. But I don't believe that. Look, I feel like even if Asmongold was the shit talk Nikkei goddess of victory, I think he'd probably lose subscribers right? If he was a shit talk anime, I think he'd lose some people, right? Even if he genuinely believed it. But again, we know who he is, and if he was to, people would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Because here's the thing: if people have an opinion, and these opinions are crafted from experiences that they've had, and again, for some reason, people just think human beings are just ants, blank slates that, have no experience, that they just lumber around until they're being told, oh, this product's shit. And then they're like, oh, well, I guess the product's shit. Like, no. Like, people have opinions. People have ideas. And people are like, okay, so why are products made 10, 15 years ago objectively superior, like made so long ago with a fraction of the manpower, a fraction of the cost, a fraction of the graphics? Why are they superior products to games and movies and TV shows and comics that are out today? Right? People are wondering this, and then you see Asmongold shit on, you see Angry Joe shit on this stuff, right? You see YouTubers actually articulating what you're thinking, but again, people aren't, like aristocrats. Like people aren't, the intelligentsia. People have their own problems, their own situations, and they have sort of like this idea, but they need it articulated, and that's what Asmongold does, right? Like they just want their opinions validated. And a lot of people watch like people like Asmongold because they agree with him. They're like, yeah, this guy's actually making sense, putting words to the phenomenon that's happening. And it's like,
after recreating the Crusades, Renaissance Italy, and the American Revolution, Assassin's Creed made the golden age of piracy its playground in 2013. The historical setting enveloped players in a swashbuckling adventure across early 18th century Caribbean waters. Naval combat mechanics entered the mix as a series first, proving so thrilling that fans wasted no time wishing for a Ubisoft-produced pirate game sans the trappings of Assassin's Creed. The publisher unveiled such a project at E3 2017. The Skull and
wow, that was like almost 10 years ago. Well, for now, that was like 7 or 8 years ago. Like this shit's been like in development hell for so long, and that's also the thing that happens when companies delegate too much and become so big. You have products that are just in development hell, then they switch out teams, switch out devs, and the devs that come in has to pick up the work.
Bones' announcement trailer and subsequent gameplay walkthroughs promised the sailing experience from Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag would be injected into a massive multiplayer romp. However, the idea derived from a simpler premise years prior, one that would have seen Black Flag receive a seafaring online suite post-launch. But ambitions swelled as Ubisoft executives heard the siren song of a recurring revenue stream. Thus, Assassin's Creed 4's multiplayer mode morphed into a live service. Creative leads struggled for years trying to devise a clear vision, all while Skull and Bones became marred by several regime changes, multiple reboots, and more than a few delays. Mismanagement in the development and publishing departments muddied the waters from the start, and Ubisoft's bold insistence on a hefty premium price tag all but doomed the so-called quadruple A title.
And this isn't just something that's happening in Ubisoft, right? Like, this is almost happening to almost every single company where talent is being switched in and out. Games and products are being mass produced as if off an assembly line. Like, stories are made by committee and by boards, and the developers working on the game have no say in the game. And by developers, I mean the people actually doing the fucking coding, because, is a voice actor considered a developer? I guess in the loosest term of the definition, but in the like Diablo, you'd have, the coders that had a say in the story, that had the say in mechanics, that some of the interns would be pulled out the office to make voice lines, which is why they sound cheesy, had a say in, dialogue. Nowadays, all that is compartmentalized. Like, you have the devs in the basement, you have the storytellers, you have the consultants over here, and you have the board that makes all the decisions. You have the team that keeps the servers running because it's going to be a live service. Like, you have all this delegation that you lose the soul of the product, and that's what happened with Forspoken, right? Because Forspoken seemed like a competent and interesting game with not entirely innovative but interesting mechanics, but the story and the world building and the character just was completely disconnected from everything else. Like, they tried to make an isekai, but they tried to make a Western isekai with a Western main protagonist doing Western things. It just didn't make any sense.
Despite nearly a decade of build-up, the pirate game launched to minimal fanfare in February 2024, courting fewer than 1 million users in week 1. Did this beleaguered endeavor ever stand a chance? Its tumultuous production history doesn't suggest as much. This is the tragedy of Skull and Bones. This video was brought to you in part by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus.
And I bet you there's more people playing this poo-poo doo-doo Warhammer card game than have ever played Concord.
Step into the eternal conflict
Okay,
of Warhammer.
so it's not a card game, it's sort of like a grid-based, turn-based game. Still poo-poo doo-doo.
40,000 Tacticus, the ultimate turn-based strategy game in the Warhammer universe. Lead 70-plus champions from 17 powerful factions in lightning-fast tactical skirmishes. Master your strategy to conquer challenges. Lead your champions, dominate the battlefield, and become...
Look, the problem with Warhammer 40k is it does anything. Like, the one time, and this is completely different, the one time they made an interesting strategy game, they made Dawn of War 3, which was garbage. I heard they're making like a Total War type 40k, but I'm not holding my breath.
Legend in the Warhammer universe with Tacticus.
3, 2, 1.
Founded in 2008, Ubisoft Singapore spent years serving as a support studio for every major Assassin's Creed installment, minus the original. Its co-development duties on AC4 Black Flag notably included the design of naval-based gameplay, yet helming Ghost Recon Phantoms also primed the Singapore office for its most daring effort. The Tom Clancy-branded multiplayer game came and went fleetingly, launching in 2014 with an unsuccessful free-to-play model that only kept it afloat for 2 years. By the time Ubisoft shut down the Phantoms servers in December 2016, many...
I heard about this game, but I've never actually even like seen gameplay of it. Like, Tom Clancy's have always been in a weird... Like, the minute Tom Clancy sold his IP, all his games have always been in a weird situation where you had a couple of first person shooters. Some of them ended up being like first person with like a squad and kind of tactical, while others just ended up just being Call of Duty and Battlefield clones, only minus the appeal. Like, Tom Clancy's, was it End War? that I played. Or Ghost Recon. Yeah, Ghost Recon was the one I played. It was interesting.
Singapore staffers already had their hands full with what would become Skull and Bones. Shortly after completing its Black Flag tasks, Ubisoft Singapore started developing the naval combat-focused online expansion. According to producer Anu Vadur, the endeavor started in 2013 by placing 2 players together on the same map. Work on building a multiplayer mode for the existing game lasted a short while, however. Anonymous sources who spoke with Kotaku in 2021 recalled how Singapore's sailing tech, as well as its then-fledgling Phantoms experience, convinced higher-ups the studio could quickly produce a live service using Black Flag assets.
Yeah, and again, live service is it's like gamers get the same reaction for the word live service than, say, people get a reaction for saying, like, a slur. It's like, ugh. Like, it's one of those things that you hear and it just grates on your neurons. It's like, live service. Yeah. Yeah. And people used to kind of have that same reaction to, like, mobile games like Clash of Clans. This was like in 2010. Like, when you see in a mobile game, you're like, ah, goofy ass, shit ass game. But now, gotchas, which are effectively the same thing, are actually becoming better products, while AAA games. It's like when you had a popular IP, you'd get so many of these poo-poo doo-doo knockoffs that would spring up from other, like, I don't know, Malaysia, in an attempt to rope into some level of that audience, and then they just fizzle out because everyone's like, we don't care for it. And the AAA game, well, I guess they weren't even AAA, and like games like Overwatch at the time, everyone would gravitate towards. But now it's the AAA games that are becoming the knockoffs, while indie games are becoming, the innovative factor in gaming. And not innovative in the sense that they're literally inventing, but like they're giving the consumer the product they want, as opposed to just a product that's imposed. And then and the company shits on you for not buying said imposed product.
Beginnings of an Assassin's Creed 4 multiplayer suite consequently transformed into a separate MMO-like project with the codename Black Flag Infinite. An inherent connection to Black Flag and its aging technology held back Infinite's growth potential on multiple fronts. For one, AC4 was a cross-gen game for both PS3 and PS4 era hardware, almost guaranteeing Infinite would be rendered obsolete upon release. Hoping to future-proof the online pirate experience, Ubisoft headquarters set aside the Assassin's Creed branding and instead charged the Singapore outfit with creating a new IP centered around high-stakes ship combat. Skull and Bones, tentatively titled Project Liberté, spawned from this line of instruction, the chaos of mismanagement nipping at its heels.
Oh my gosh. Like, you hear the shanties of Black Flag and you're like, man, they used to be this. They used to be this.
"120 days. That's how long the average pirate survived a lawless life on the seas during the golden age of piracy. I'm Justin Farron, the creative director for Skull and Bones, and this is your chance to not just survive, but to climb the food chain and surpass the...
Even in the years leading up to the E3 2017 unveiling, the core Skull and Bones premise manifested in various forms. One embryonic version imagined Project Liberté in a Caribbean setting like Black Flag. Another pre-production iteration reportedly took inspiration from strategy games Sid Meier's Pirates. And what...
Was that the... No, there was a turn-based version of this, I think. But it was on, like, freewebgames.com. I swear I played this game. No. Yeah, there was I played the turn-based version of this game. Well, I don't even know if it was this particular game, but yeah, I think I had this on. Was it my old laptop? There's a time where if it had Sid Meier's on it, I'd play it. Now, not so much.
Would have seen players explore Hyperborea, a fantasy world where branching multiplayer campaigns could last for weeks. The mythical pirate utopia Libertalia constituted the primary influence behind a third variation. Though all were explored to some extent, none of these ideas advanced beyond prototyping. Still, Ubisoft Singapore invested a significant amount of resources and time into each iteration as a result of constantly reworked concepts. The focus shifted around 2017 when Leeds decided a sessions-based shooter modeled after Rainbow Six Siege, but with boats, was the best bet. An Indian Ocean backdrop seemed optimal as well, considering the large ocean basin housed every major ecosystem and a wealth of trade resources. Plus, the ocean's proximity to Singapore provided the developers with a certain air of confidence that they'd be able to faithfully fashion a fantasy about how the region's pirates operated. Ubisoft showcased a glimpse of this vision during the Skull and Bones reveal at Microsoft's E3 2017 press conference. On top of the bombastic ship combat, initial details teased epic encounters against AI pirates and beasts lying in wait beneath the water. The promise of 5v5.
See, and it had that concept, but with Assassin's Creed Black Flag, that would have been interesting, right? If it was Assassin's Creed Black Flag, plus everything he just said was going to be like that, would have been a good game. But see, this is what happened with like many, the Ubisoft was spread so thin because they have to keep capitalizing off their live service games, but they have to make new products, but they have to, mass produce what works. And it's like, if you're spread too fucking thin, yeah, the product's going to suffer. Like, I played, Rainbow Six when it first came out, and I was like, nah. But then I played the fuck out of a game called For Honor, and For Honor had an interesting combat system. It was kind of like there's really no other comparison to that. It's kind of like if Mortal Kombat met Dynasty Warriors in a 3D plane with combo-based combat, and obviously you can block and guard break and all, and so there are certain attacks like unblockable. Like, I played the fuck out of that game, and then just out of nowhere I dropped it. I was like, I had my heyday with the game, but then they just started releasing characters that were just objectively better than everything. Like, they released a block everything, including unblockables type of character. They released, I don't know, an infinite fucking combo with everything type of character. They released a shove, free light type of character. Like, they released all these characters that just creamed the original roster. I played a character called Highlander, and Highlander was a good character, but you had to figure out how to use him in a way that, would trip people up, because everyone knew his kit at one point. I didn't care. I still played the character, and I'm not going to keep glazing For Honor, because it was a good game at the time, but it went the route most fighting games do, where the meta progresses, characters are changed and nerfed and buffed until it's not really even the same game anymore. But yeah, I mean, they released decent products that didn't, because For Honor didn't really go anywhere. Like, it had its niche, And then, I don't know, I guess they just got greedy. They're like, oh, hey, let's make a character that's good just to force people to buy it. And that's the thing with Ubisoft. It just got greedy. And now, even the shareholders are like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? And they're going to war with Ubisoft because they have all these IPs that they're squatting, shitting, and farting on. Like Rayman, right? You know, Splinter Cell. Like, they have all these IPs that they're just not doing anything with. And I think they should, like, because things like patents and copyrights eventually wear off. I think IPs should do the same. Because you're holding, you know, like, a product. It's effectively a brand in the palm of your hand. And you're refusing to release a product based off that brand. And you don't want anyone else to use the name or the brand, so you just sit on it. And then if you don't want to do anything with it, well, you should probably lose that IP, that intellectual property.
5-player modes and ship customization centered around RPG-inspired boat classes also captured the public's attention. Justin Farron, the project's first creative director, touted improved wind mechanics as another major improvement over Black Flag, especially since the feature boasted offensive and defensive uses combined with standard navigational tools. Regardless of the compelling trailers and marketing speak, Skull and Bones couldn't escape comparisons to Rare's more stylized Sea of Thieves pirate sim. Ubisoft developers argued tone as the key differentiating factor. Sea of Thieves ran rampant with light-hearted fun, whereas Ubisoft's title prioritized a grittier approach informed by many pirates historically fleeing to the Indian Ocean after getting chased out of the Caribbean. Speaking with GamesIndustry.biz, the studio's director of product and service, Francois Loger, noted that Skull and Bone imagined those pirates entering new waters and fighting to reach the top of the food chain, thus evoking a mafia kind of story, separate from other pirate games. And thanks to the lessons learned from Ghost Recon Phantoms, community feedback was positioned as an integral part of pre- and post-launch development. As such, news about the Keepers of the Code program accompanied the Skull and Bones announcement, inviting users to playtest the game and influence its creation. But some Kotaku sources claimed Ubisoft executives wanted more from E3 2017's sessions-based build and tasked developers with designing additive exploration buttressed by a world whose quest could venture beyond monetizing the PvP grind.
Yeah, and again, and that's the thing that probably spiraled it down, because they're like, okay, how do we make money off of just above just selling the product? How can we make money and monetize every single interaction with the PvP, as opposed to putting out the product then just doing that later? Like in most games, like, you know, the store is up and running day one. Like, the minute the product's there, the microtransactions hit your fucking dick. Instead of putting out the game, seeing if people are even going to like it, or even get into it, then putting out the microtransactions, and then putting the store, right? They wanted to be like, no, the day this game comes out, we will have the monetization of a live service, and manipulate them to pay even more fucking money. I think that's kind of what drove the game down. I mean, that and the fact that Skull and Bones was just an inferior game to Black Flag, even though, again, they themselves kept touting Black Flag, Black Flag, Black Flag. It's going to be like Black Flag. Everyone like Black Flag. Let's make it like Black Flag. And then it ended up just being less of a game than Black Flag. Like, to my knowledge, like, the ship invasion mechanic was just a cutscene. Like, you didn't even get to go on the ship in battle. And whoever has the highest number won. So it's like a rock, paper, scissors, only with numbers. Like, the game was bad. The game was... You'll be hard pressed to find anyone who actually liked Skull and Bones.
While Ubisoft Singapore toiled away on these ambitions, Skull and Bones received the first of many delays in May 2018, pushing its release out of the previously announced fall 2018 window and into a nebulous 2019 through 2020 period. The publisher told investors the prolonged production cycle would result in an even more engaging experience for players. At least some of what the company had in mind occupied center stage weeks later during E3 2018. Skull and Bones returned to the trade show with a new PvPvE free roam mode called Hunting Grounds that resembled the Division's Dark Zones. A shared world mode, Hunting Grounds would let players work alone or with friends to harass merchant vessels, pillage trade routes, and engage in other disruptive activities. Ubisoft promoted it as complementary to the pre-existing PvP offering called Disputed Waters, and while both showed promise, developers later alleged that neither of Skull and Bones' E3 builds really existed beyond vertical slices. In the long run, the specifics mattered little. The Skull and Bones Ubisoft exhibited for 2 years was abandoned in favor of pursuing disparate gameplay possibilities.
Okay, so all the things they've shown just didn't exist. Like, it's odd that they have one way of speaking to the shareholders and another way of speaking to the consumer and another way of showing off E3. It's like, can't all three of these things just be the same? Like for Elden Ring, like how they speak with the shareholders, how they speak with the consumer, how they release their showcase the game with From Software. It's the same way, like, and it's some goofy Japanese dude who's been slaving away 12 hours coding just to sell a damn good game to us gaijin, right? And it ends up just being a better product, where they have 3 different types of ways of selling the game to 3 different people, and it ended up just being none of what they showed and or told anybody.
Constant regime changes counted among the many contributing factors to the project's lengthy stay in development hell. Assassin's Creed veteran Sebastian Puel helped shepherd Skull and Bones through its early days in an executive producer role. Reportedly, Puel's lack of multiplayer expertise motivated his exit. Justin Farron, another longtime Assassin's Creed producer, took over as creative director in 2016, fostering good ideas by many accounts, though they failed to align with what Ubisoft headquarters wanted. Notably, Farron stuck around until June 2019, 1 month after the second delay. The vice president of editorial from Ubisoft's Paris HQ, Elisabeth Pellin, assumed the role of creative director shortly thereafter and helmed a new way forward. Leadership had previously debated whether the project would center a pirate or their ship as the main playable character. The E3 2017 and 2018 builds revolved around the latter. The mid-2019 reboot focalized a playable pirate, then implemented exploration and survival elements borrowed from Rust and Ark Survival Evolved. Letting users roam land masses on foot represented another new point of interest, one prompting several rounds of trial and error. Existing combat, looting, and sailing mechanics remained intact, supported by crafting, trading, and other resource management features. The survival-based additions inspired higher stakes for dying, yielding what some developers deemed a roguelike light edge. Such drastic shifts invited more chaos since the engine tools used for Skull and Bones were ill-fated for land exploration and the sudden inclusion of deeper inventory management. Their crew sunk 6 to 12 months into sorting through the resulting issues, so it's no wonder Ubisoft's October 2019 earnings report confirmed a third delay.
Yeah, and it's very odd that you have veterans that clearly know what sells in the industry getting shoved along by an executive board at Ubisoft that doesn't know the product. They don't know the consumer. They don't know the devs. They're like, no, this is what we want, and we'll shove anyone out that doesn't fit what we or doesn't do what we want. And it's honestly, if with that mentality, it's not surprising. Like, that's like the core reason why games are in development hell. When directors and executives are switched out and devs are switched out for new ones and new visions. Like, even like the game and the story itself is not agreed upon because you have the corporate that wants one thing, but the devs like I guess like not even the devs, like the execs or the people who want another thing, and it's this means to again mass produce a product instead of having someone to take the artistic lead and be like, okay, this is what we need, this is what we'll sell, as opposed to just looking at spreadsheets and looking around at other companies and what they do, right? Like, again, and I don't really like comparing one game to another because I think, clearly, like, how do I say this? I mean, it just doesn't feel respectful. Like, people will declare, like, compare, like, Anthem to, like, 7, 8 other games that are completely different. It's like, well, can we just, judge this one game off its own merit instead of throwing others into the mix? But you kind of have to do this when it comes to, products nowadays because the question becomes, why would I pay $70 for Skull and Bones if I can get a much better experience from Assassin's Creed Black Flag? Like, was Skull and Bones 70? I thought it was less than that. But whatever, you just get what Skull and Bones should have been from Black Flag.
Officially, the publisher kept Skull and Bones out of the limelight for quite some time. But fresh details surfaced courtesy of reporting from Video Games Chronicle in July 2020. Development sources who spoke with VGC alleged the 2019 reboot had introduced a live game model featuring live storytelling elements. As a result, instead of the Division's games as a service angle with its regular updates and unchanging game world, the reworked experience took cues from Fortnite, dropping players into a persistent world filled with characters, quests, and storylines whose changes depended on community behavior. Stopping short of corroborating the VGC story, Ubisoft Singapore's September 2020 blog post revealed that progress on a new vision had entered full swing. The message additionally explains Skull and Bones' many delays. As ambitions swelled, so too did the challenges accompanying them. The studio consequently spent several months in 2020 conceptualizing how to modernize the classic pirate fantasy, while also crafting an immersive adventure replete with memorable moments. Prolonging the development cycle seemed the optimal way to get at the heart of the conundrum. Ubisoft further facilitated production efforts at this juncture upon assigning satellite studios like those in Berlin, Chengdu, Kyiv, Paris, and the Philippines to assist the Singaporean outfit. A fourth delay followed in May 2021, pushing the release to an unspecified date between April 2022 and March 2023.
Yeah, again, all this delegation is crazy. Like, and I even go back to the Anthem example because we were told the devs didn't even know what type of fucking game they were even. Like, the people who do the coding, right? The people who do the art, that adds the mechanics, they didn't even know what the fuck type of game they were making until it was showcased in E3. Or was it the Game Awards? Yeah, one of those. Like, they didn't even know what type of fucking game they were making. Like, that's levels of project mismanagement that's on a whole nother level than just, this. But now, don't get me wrong, this is bad. This is amazing. But it's like it had one vision and they went towards one vision, but then they switched to another vision. Then they barreled towards that vision. Then they switched to another creative vision. And and at the end of the day, the game was just mediocre, missing the majority of the things, again, that were shown to us at E3. And it's like, what? Like, what is this? The game legitimately looked like a knockoff to Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And it cost $200 fucking million knockoff.
Ubisoft Chief Financial Officer Frederick Duguay spoke highly of the project's creative direction in a financial call, then stated development had been advancing well for the past year. At the time,
Yeah, corporate speak. Again, they're doing that thing again. He did the thing. Like the game is still evolving. Everyone knows what a Ubisoft game is supposed. Like this is corpo speak. This is them trying to, you know, hush the flames uh, of the consumer and of the shareholders. And as we see, that didn't exactly work out. Now, did it?
time of Kotaku's June 2021 report, sources claimed the direction was still evolving because the multiplayer title hadn't hit the mark. Some people in the know blamed the turbulence on a general lack of direction, exacerbated by too many leads taking charge while few were willing to make tough calls. For other developers, the issues stemmed from the project being rushed. Still, there were those who maintained the fault laid at the feet of Ubisoft's editorial division, which proved difficult to please. One ex-staffer alleged editorial would occasionally freak out and change everything, a recipe for disaster since directional shifts forced adjustments that affected everything from progression to the in-game economy. Culture clashes between the Assassin's Creed and Ghost Recon Phantoms teams compounded the situation, as did the revolving door of creative leads. Not only did the latter cause multiple reboots, leadership shakeups most often meant previously shelved ideas were relegated and sometimes cast aside once again. Wasting time thus became the name of the game. Therefore, developers occasionally either found themselves with nothing to do or stuck in a cycle of busy work while higher-ups contemplated the next course of action. Reportedly, a culture of fear...
Yeah, and again, that's well, accusation of sexual misconduct, man. And that's the weird thing. Again, you have all these things just happening, and this is day by day, month by month, for years, and this all just culminated. Like the product was doomed. I'd say it was doomed after the first exec switch. They probably went through like, gosh, 4 or 5, 7 or 8 design switches, and at the end of the day, it just end up having really just the shell, but none of the substance.
Adversely impacted Ubisoft Singapore throughout Skull and Bones' development as well, based on allegations of misconduct and workplace toxicity. Employees who spoke out claimed the publisher's efforts in 2020 to rid its ranks of bad actors accomplished little in terms of reforming the work environment. Difficulty retaining employees dogged the beleaguered multiplayer effort too. Supposedly,
yeah, and for some reason, a lot of entertainment companies do this. It's like if you would talk bad about the product, and that you were working on, that you were made to code, they would fire you. It's this toxic positivity that leads products down just this bad road, if there's even a road there to begin with, because you would want the people working on the game to have a say and to be creative, but this is what happens when you delegate to in different places across the globe with different cultures, right, working on the same product. Like, you're going to have certain things that do not align. It's like, I guess we're not even allowed to talk about that. But yeah, if you have different cultures, different ideas, but you're working on the same price, obviously there's going to be clashes there.
Culminating in an unprecedented staff exodus, in which senior developers left in droves due to the constant fits and starts. The fraught production cycle naturally raised questions about why Ubisoft simply didn't pull the plug. A few developers believed a deal with the Singaporean government was what staved off cancellation, considering the country's Economic Development Board had granted the publisher subsidies in 2016 to foster AAA game development in the region. Skull and Bones seemingly benefited from a certain level of immunity, though nothing could save it from the downward spiral that ultimately plagued its market debut.
In other words, they got a lot of money from the Singaporean government, and all that really didn't culminate into anything. because they still didn't even know what product they were making. So they took the money. I doubt the coders and the devs actually made the money. Like all that money's probably funneled into the pockets of the senior execs and never seen, only to release a game that everyone will forget about in like a month. Like people will shit on it because it costs so much, but we'll never even bring up the name again.
Break down this game! Break! We're gonna die! Carolina Cowboys lost!
Skull and Bones finally received a November 2022 launch date that July for PC, PS5, Xbox, and Google Stadia. New details confirmed.
The fucking Google Stadia? Was that a thing? It was a thing. It was a thing, because I've seen so many goofy, like, advertisements for it. And at the end of the day, it was just software. Like, there was no hard... Like, I guess the remote was technically the hardware, but it was just software, and I think it, like, immediately flopped.
Players would spend most of their time at sea with scattered chances of exploring the world on solid ground. A worldwide gameplay reveal followed the news, spotlighting multiplayer crafting, ship management, and exploration. In short, hopeful players were promised an adventure wherein they'd be able to assemble a crew aboard a small sloop and expand it into a mighty force on hulking warships. Viewers quickly expressed skepticism, lambasting the first-person ship camera, a lack of shipboarding combat, and the dated-looking visuals. Many begrudged Ubisoft for not delivering something along the lines of a Black Flag 2.0 experience.
Yeah, like, this looks completely different from what they've shown in the showcase. Like, this is effectively a completely different game, and again, lacking the like 70% of the mechanics they said they had. Like, it was right for the consumers to be like, what the fuck is this?
Ubisoft postponed Skull and Bones for a 5th time in September 2022. An extra 5 months would be used for polishing and balancing purposes, a necessity to improve the project's chances of long-term success. A 6th and final delay cited similar intentions in January 2023 as developers prepared for Skull and Bones' February 2024 rollout on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series platforms. The pirate title became mired in controversy once more ahead of launch, courtesy of its contentious $70 price tag. As a live service game with a battle pass, in-game store, and premium currency, the general consensus argued Skull and Bones had no business demanding such a high entry point. Even investors raised concerns during an earnings call. One pondered whether the cost could presumably limit the player base. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot defended the decision, labeling Skull and Bones a quadruple A endeavor that
when he said, like, I swear, like, because I had this discussion with my friends and my brother, it's like, I 100% believe he thinks this. Like, he's someone that looks at spreadsheets, looks at trends, looks at literally everything else than what the consumer wants, what the shareholder wants. Like, it could be both corpo speak and what he legitimately believes. At least at the time. Now, they're getting triple fucked by their own shareholders, but I mean, if you make as much money as him, you'd be like, well, I guess the company's doing good. I mean, how am I making all this fucking money? It's like, well, I mean, Ubisoft did make a lot of money until shares are so far down the toilet, it's barely worth the toilet paper you wipe your ass with. Hell, after you wipe your ass with the toilet paper, it's worth more than the Ubisoft stock. But, like, if you've worked these positions, you like people think in higher positions in a completely different like realm than the devs, the senior devs, even the shareholders who are over here on the left, the consumers who's over here on the right. Like I 100% like it's such a stupid term. It's like what does AAA mean? Oh, games that we'll dump even more money into and will probably cost even more. And at least in this case, be less of a game. It's like now people just don't care for AAA anymore. But yeah, I think he believes this. Like, could he be lying? Maybe. But having worked under positions like this, like not having worked his position, but like the position of upper management in jobs, like you see just this odd, completely disconnected way of thinking than the workers, and they convince themselves that this is true. Again, he just looks at spreadsheets, he looks at trends. If he even does that, he rakes in probably millions of dollars above his salary. Like, yeah.
Warranted steeper pricing because it offered a full-fledged game that would deliver in the long run.
And see, a full-fledged game that would deliver in the long run. That's kind of like both those things just are butting heads with each other. Like they're complete opposites. Like you can't have a full-fledged game at launch that will keep a deliver. That doesn't make any sense.
Reviews and user.
I mean, I guess that's kind of what a live service is. But the problem with live services, they don't give you full-fledged games. They give you a fifth of the game, then sell the rest to you, you know, as DLC or as pre-order bonuses or as season pass models. Like, that's the problem.
Impressions soon thereafter suggested otherwise. Dismal review scores permeated the day one discourse. The common assessment being that while Skull and Bones provided a fun adventure,
Wait, did I see a fucking 70? No, hold on now.
The common assessment
I couldn't even see
being
further
that while
down.
Skull and Bones provided a fun adventure, repetition, minimal gameplay variation, and dull missions did not beget a lasting thrill ride. The stellar ship combat and navigation that made Black Flag shine over a decade prior worked wonders for the multiplayer romp, yet could only bear so much of the heavy lifting. Users shared similarly unfavorable critiques, and low player counts did little to improve the perception. Insider Gaming's Tom Henderson heard from sources who claimed the repeatedly delayed title barely cracked 850,000 players in its first week, numbers bolstered by a free trial promotion. It was...
Yeah, I was like, oh, 850 players? 1,000 players? What the fuck? No. Free trial. I see.
far from a great start for a project created on an estimated $200 million budget. Users who did dive in seemed engaged at the very least, logging about 3+ hours of playtime per day. Either way, developers knew sales figures were less than satisfactory, with some attributing the soft launch to the ill-advised $70 price tag.
Yeah, it was
Specific failings aside, Skull and Bones' various shortcomings appeared indicative of a larger, company-wide issue within Ubisoft. Insider Gaming published a report prior to launch detailing the internal tensions that had beset the France-based organization. Sources familiar with the in-house operations identified Ubisoft's penchant for chasing trends in recent years as one of the key culprits behind its steady decline.
Oh my god, I forgot, what was this? I can't even remember the name of this fucking NFT game, but apparently there's someone already, like a glitch in the Matrix where one NFT fucking chess character will just win every time. Like, this is what happens when you get, you know, the trend chaser type of marketing or type of marketers into the company. Be like, oh, You know what people like? They like crypto. They like NFTs. They like this, that, and the other. That's what the cool kids are into. And you have no real direction in the company. So you're just like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And it universally fucking flops. Like, this is their attempt to make effectively a gotcha game. But why? Like, you see, one eye's looking one way. Oh, wait, no. The red's the pupil. I thought the black was the pupil because you had one eye looking the one way, and this looking the other, and it's like she's on, like, this person's on the fence. Yeah, again, this is what you happen when you have trend chasing marketing, and now everything's going to be AI because of trend chaser marketing. Instead of sticking to what you're good at.
Between 2021 and 2022, for instance, the Assassin's Creed publisher had approximately 12 Battle Royale shooters in development, many of them
What? 12 Battle Royale shooters. Ghost Recon Front. That's crazy. Again, this is ridiculous. Like, no fucking wonder people are going, like, the shareholders are going to war with Ubisoft. They're like, what the fuck? Or like, let's make this clear. Like, the minute people heard that Ubisoft was getting bought up by Tencent, like, that's when the stock grew just a little bit, though, until it sunk like the ship in one of those fucking, like, play a video. It's like, yeah, this is the company, and many other companies should follow suit with this. Like, Ubisoft is just the beginning and a wake up call that if you are a company, and I don't care if companies making money. Like, a lot of people have this idea that if you're a company, you're just evil, and it's like, companies aren't moral entities. You know, businesses aren't moral entities, so you just don't give them moral, like, you just don't view them in a moral way. So I don't care if a company wants to make money, but if you fail to release a product that the consumer wants, the question is, why do you exist? And Ubisoft is now feeling this backlash because they're failing to release products that the consumer wants. And now the shareholders, as well as the consumers, are going to war with them. And they're doing this thing where they're fighting wars on all fronts. You have the ideology and people trying to impose their morality in Ubisoft. You have the execs that, you have the type of people that blame the consumer for shit not being sold, or for the hate happening on any product, as if a product is a moral entity. Like, it's either you like the product or you don't. I mean, there might be in-betweens, but they're few and far in between. Like, you have, again, them shitting on even better products, right? Like, better games from better, superior companies. Like, you have this thing where they're just warring with everyone, including the shareholders. And again, their stock is just worthless now. And God knows what's going to happen to Ubisoft. Like, the best thing would be to just sell the IPs or make them public fucking domain at this point. Like, there's really nothing else you can do with them.
ceremoniously shelved. Poor management of this scale naturally resulted in delays becoming the norm. When paired with unclear creative directions and toxic work environments, it's no surprise the likes of Beyond Good and Evil 2 entered and remained trapped in development hell throughout Skull and Bones' prolonged stint.
Oh my god, why? Look, this looked interesting. At least from what they showed, but yeah, I think the game's cooked.
But Ubisoft's live service games have turned things around in the past, Rainbow Six Siege constituting the most famous example. Skull and Bones could someday enjoy a comparable surge, contingent on whichever way the wind blows for Ubisoft as a whole.
Yep. Yeah, when this happened, when people heard this was happening, like, the stock grew. This is how bad Ubisoft was mismanaging their company. When they heard Tencent was going to buy out Ubisoft, the stock went boop. But then it just continued going back down. It just continued going down. Oh, God. But yeah, it's just... Ubisoft is first. But we'll see what other company... Like, I think maybe Blizzard. I mean, CD Projekt Red. Naughty Dog. I mean, people defend Naughty Dog like he's... Oh, fucking... What's his goddamn name? Neil Cuckman. Like he's like the Messiah for some fucking reason. Again, everything he has, he inherited from a far superior CEO that was Amy Hennig. Like everything he has, he's inherited. And now people just acting like, no, he built, he's the ruler. Biggest fumble ever. They had the entire blueprint from Black Flag. The fact that you can't sail somewhere, hop off your ship, or into the water, or that you can't even board other ships and duel it out is inexcusable. Just copy your own word. Yeah, this is what people ask. Like, literally just copy and paste the fucking game. But they couldn't, they just chose not to do that. Seeing modern slot fail hard is far more entertaining than playing them. But yeah, and that's the sad thing, right? People don't want games, like people want good games. People want good products. But they just can't, they refuse to give you that. Use off a decade of stupidity on God. Gamers going to have a good time deep diving in every disaster from 2024. 120 days and average pirates survived back then. They pretty much recreated just that with this game's lifespan. On God. Unshark Players was just asking for a downgraded Black Flag, and Ubisoft still didn't deliver. Yeah, that's the audacity. Submit the game that nobody wants to pirate. Yep. Literally, people wouldn't even pirate this game. That's how bad it is. I wouldn't even pirate it for free. You guys can make a game about a cup of water and still fuck it up. They are their worst enemy, yes. I still don't get how they fail so spectacularly. AC4 defined how pirate games should play. How they want from accidental success to over-engineered flop is incredible. Yeah, like they weren't expecting Black Flag to even really be that good. I mean, they pretty much straight ripped Assassin's Creed 3's engine. Like, the one part of Assassin's Creed Black 3, which was the ship combat, everyone liked. And they're like, yeah, we'll just take that and straight rip the engine and just make an entire game based off a fraction of a mechanic of a game, and it ended up just being a superior game. A good game. Well, I don't know if it was superior. Well, I personally think it was better than 3. But 3 was also amazing. So, I mean, quadruple A is never not going to be the funniest thing in gaming. Besides, maybe y'all have phones, don't you? Yep. Comparison of Sea of Thieves. No one wants another online MMO, RPG, PvP. We wanted another Black Flag. Yes, and this is the thing, right? They wanted to they really wanted to make something that they can milk as much money from the consumer as possible. But they didn't know how to make that. So it ended up just being goofy. It was over when they gave ships a stamina bar. Yeah. Like, yes. This would make sense if it was, you know, dudes rowing the boat like under the boat, getting whipped to have it fucking rowed faster. The stamina bar would make sense, but it wasn't that type of game. Gamers should get used to not owning their games. Yeah, that's the sad thing. But anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Like, it is weird how many flops are just entering the space. And it's like, not only that, like, they demand, like, people demand these certain flops exist because there's an ideology attached to it. And it's like, brah, really? But anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Peace.